Hi everyone, before I tell you what happened, I want to thank you for joining me today. If you enjoy true gripping stories about betrayal justice and turning the tables, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. My name is Marcus Hale. For 25 years, I thought I understood love, loyalty, and family. I built a home with my own hands, raised a daughter I'm proud of, and ran a business I poured my life into. I thought my marriage was built on trust. But one quiet afternoon, a chance turned down the wrong street and the sight of my wife's car, where it shouldn't be opened a window, into a betrayal so calculated, so cold, it changed everything I thought I knew. What you're about to hear is not just the story of how they tried to destroy me. It's the story of how I fought back piece by piece until the truth was the only thing left standing. I wasn't planning to stop by my son-in-law's house that day. It was one of those early spring afternoons where the wind still carried a chill and the clouds threatened rain. I had just left a job site on the west side of town feeling satisfied after finalizing a deal for a new municipal building. As I turned onto Oak Ridge Drive, my eyes caught a glimpse of something that stopped my breath, a gleaming pearl-white Mercedes parked in front of Daniel's gate. It wasn't just any Mercedes. It was Elena's car, my wife's pride and joy, a car that should have been sitting safely in our garage. Immediately, a weight dropped into my stomach. A strange instinct, the kind you don't want to trust but can't ignore, gripped me. Why here? Why now? I muttered under my breath. I pulled my truck to the curb a little further down out of sight from the front windows and just sat there for a moment watching. I could have just called her, asked why she was here, but something told me not to. Elena had said she'd be at her office all day working on final touches for an event her company was hosting that weekend. Daniel, my son-in-law, was supposed to be home working on case files. My daughter Lila had mentioned she'd be in another city for a conference. That made this coincidence too perfect or too planned. I killed the engine and stepped out, every muscle in my body taut. My boots crunched softly against the gravel as I moved up the side of the house. Daniel's place had one of those tall living room windows that faced the driveway, but sat just high enough to give a decent view if you were close. Halfway there, I told myself I was being ridiculous. Maybe Elena had just dropped something off. Maybe they were discussing something for Lila. But when I got close enough to hear voices, my pulse started pounding. Through a narrow gap in the curtains, I could see Elena reclining on the couch, perfectly composed, legs crossed, like she was hosting a social call. Daniel stood near the bookshelf, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of something dark. And then Elena's voice floated through the half-open window, calm, controlled, and sharp enough to cut. Once Marcus signs the papers, it's all ours. We just have to hold steady. My chest tightened. Marcus. That was me. Daniel's smirk deepened as he leaned forward slightly. The timeline is tight, but it's doable. File in July, claim irreconcilable differences. Under state law, you'll get half of everything accumulated during the marriage. And lifetime support. My mouth went dry. This wasn't some vague argument or marital spat. This was a plan. A legal, calculated plan to gut me financially. Elena laughed that same laugh I'd once thought was the most beautiful sound in the world. Between his construction company, the rentals, the investments. We're looking at close to $15 million. Not bad for 2 years of pretending to care about his day-to-day nonsense. My knees felt weak. The woman I'd built a life with was talking about our marriage, like it was a long-running performance she was glad to wrap up. I fumbled my phone from my pocket, my hand shaking, and hit record. Daniel's voice came through clear. The best part? He's so trusting. We've been collecting documents for months, bank statements, property deeds, everything without him even noticing. You practically handed me the blueprint to your fortune. I swallowed hard. The blueprint to my fortune. Elena leaned back, inspecting her manicured nails. It's almost insulting how easy it's been. I just nod when he talks about deadlines or payroll. He thinks I'm listening because I care. I'm just cataloging assets. I didn't realize I'd stepped closer until a twig snapped under my boot. Both of them froze their heads, snapping toward the window. My heart jumped into my throat. Daniel frowned. You hear that? Probably a squirrel, Elena said quickly, but her eyes darted toward the curtains. I pressed myself flat against the brick wall, holding my breath until the conversation resumed. My phone was still recording. Every poisonous word. 15 minutes later, I was back in my truck, staring through the windshield without really seeing anything. 25 years of marriage had just been reduced to a transaction, a legal strategy session between my wife and the man married to my daughter. The manila folder I'd glimpsed on Daniel's coffee table haunted me, my life documented and organized for dismantling. I gripped the steering wheel hard enough for my knuckles to ache. These were the same hands that had poured the first concrete slab for my business, signed my first big contract, held Elena's hand at our wedding, carried our newborn daughter into the house. Elena's words replayed in my mind. The man actually believes I love him. The truth was brutal. Until 15 minutes ago, I absolutely did. The front door of Daniel's house opened, snapping me back to the present. Elena stepped out first, adjusting her designer sunglasses, her expensive handbag swinging at her side. Daniel followed, straightening his tie with that same smug confidence. They froze when they saw me sitting in the truck. Elena's eyes widened for just a fraction of a second before she pasted on a bright smile. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" Her tone was light, but her voice pitched a little higher than normal. I forced my face into something neutral. Was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd stop by and see Lila. "She's not here." Daniel cut in quickly, stepping a little closer to Elena, almost protectively. Elena nodded. "We were just going over some legal paperwork for a friend." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I thought you had that charity event prep all day." A flicker of unease crossed her face before she smoothed it away. "I left early. Headache." I nodded slowly. "Hope you feel better." Daniel gave a tight smile. "We should get back to it." "Of course," I said, glancing at my phone deliberately before putting it back in my pocket. "Don't let me keep you." As I drove away, I caught sight of them in the rearview mirror, leaning in close, whispering urgently the moment they thought I was gone. They didn't know it yet, but I had 40 minutes of crystal clear audio that would change everything. I drifted home on habit, not thought. In the circular drive, the anniversary fountain hissed under a dull sky, and Elena's line kept looping. "Once Marcus signs the papers, it's all ours." I killed the engine and went inside. The house felt hollow. I'd framed these rooms in 1998, measured the stair rise myself, laid walnut treads on a Sunday so the glue could cure. Every inch had been a promise. Maybe I was the only one who meant it. Our wedding photo waited on the mantel December 12th, 1996. Elena bright as a winter window, me in a tux a size too honest. We were both certain that was the first thing we lost. Change hadn't crashed in. It seeped. The pivot was 2019, the Riverfront Civic Center contract, $45 million over 3 years. I came home ready to toast the crew. Elena met me with a realtor's sheet. Garden District, 6 bedrooms. We're finally moving. Not congratulations allocation. Country club dues for networking. A second car for errands. Complaints about my snoring after 23 quiet years. Separate bedrooms for sleep hygiene. A phone always face down. After Lila married Daniel in 2023, Elena's small talk turned into case law. What's equitable distribution? What if a spouse hides assets? Worry for a friend aimed at my ledger. I replayed the recording from Daniel's window until it stopped vibrating in my hands. Evidence, not emotion. Then I opened both laptops and pulled a fresh legal pad. 4 columns: assets, weaknesses, timeline, leverage. Across the top, play the long game. Make no noise. First call, Sophia Reyes, my CPA. I need an estate refresh and an exposure audit, I said. 9 o'clock, she answered. Bring nothing to email. By 9:15, her conference table was a plan. You already have a Delaware holdco, she said. We formalize a family limited partnership move, retained earnings upstream and paper intercompany notes. Ordinary, lawful, boring, which is strong. She slid a small box over. Secondary phone. Use it for alerts Elena doesn't see. What about operating cash? Keep it in the OpCo. Tighten approvals. Set triggers to this number. She clicked her pen. And stop forwarding statements. Assume your inbox is public art. Back home, I walked the numbers like a fence line after wind. I didn't need forensic tools. $42,600 in miscellaneous over 8 months club lunches that multiplied wellness charges for a doctor we don't know, boutique purchases that always matched book club nights where no books appeared, 24 small transfers to an account I'd never seen, Caledonia Savings 8844, beneficiary D, Cartwright, subtle as a billboard. I printed the pages and labeled a red folder, Facts. Feelings could wait. Then I called around the trades. Construction is a small town pretending it's big, and Daniel had shaken enough hands to leave fingerprints. Cartwright said Evan at Pioneer Concrete. Good haircut, slow pay. Owes my cousin's cabinet shop $9 grand. Corner office spaceship espresso, said Denise at Hawthorne and Ross. Loves optics, hates payables. Public records added texture. 2 ethics complaints dismissed for insufficient evidence. Student loans over $160 in office lease, sized for a firm twice his. Not illegal, but pressure and image don't age well together. My phone lit with Lila's name. Dad, she said, steady as clinic air. Is everything okay with you and Mom? Why? There's a posture. Also, Daniel's been asking how Cole & Sons is structured, who owns which LLC, who signs what, how distributions work. He says he's curious. It feels like cartography. Your instincts are good, I said. If anyone asks, our structure is complicated and boring. Both true, so nothing's wrong. Your mother and I are sorting decisions. I left the rest unsaid. She was my daughter, not my shield. I'll tell you when you need to know. After we hung up, Quiet returned. I copied the recording to 2 encrypted drives, one into the shop safe behind a panel. Only I can pull one to a lockbox at the yard. I changed passwords I hadn't touched in years, killed the cheerful door chime Elena liked, and replaced it with a silent push to the watch I wear, even in the shower. If a storm was coming, I wanted to hear the first drop. Night made the house look staged like a model no one lives in. The fountain hiccuped and resumed. A compressor thumped twice. I heard everything now. On the pad, I wrote 2 names and 3 lines each. Alina wants status, access, and audience. Thinks I'm sentimental and slow. Can't afford to lose the narrative. Daniel wants money, reputation, proximity to power. Thinks rules are optional. Can't afford stains on his license or a cash choke. Strategy rewards patience, so I practiced some. I didn't call Elena. I didn't confront Daniel. I didn't feed gossip to anyone who might swap my words for comfort. I slept in the spare room and let the house breathe. At dawn, I brewed the coffee I like, and Elena calls uncivilized. The yard shifted from charcoal to slate to pale blue. I took Sophia's secondary phone and typed a list bank credit union card issuer's payroll processor. Paper is slow. People are faster. I booked meetings with humans whose names appear on doors. Before I left, I walked the banister, the threshold, the pantry, shelves, things I could touch that stayed true. At the door, I paused, hearing Elena's recorded laugh, the one that used to be bells and now sounded like glass and locked up. On a note card, I wrote the rule for the next week. No noise, only paper, security reviews, access verifications, dual controls, temporary holds where joint access invited mischief. Not punishment preservation. I'd let policy do the talking so I wouldn't have to. If Elena called it abuse, I'd call Tom Rivera, the branch president, and ask him to recite the regulation by number. Slowly. Tomorrow had arrived. First stop, the bank. Granite First Bank smelled like cleaner and certainty. Tom Rivera met me with a firm handshake and a look that said he could guess why I was here. We sat in a small glass room, paper stacked. Account security review, I said, handing over a 1-page checklist I'd typed at dawn. Verify all joint access. In-person ID for any change. Dual control on wires. Alerts to this number only. I want friction. Compliance loves that word, Tom said. We'll place temporary holds on joint accounts and cards. Payroll and vendor ACH can be whitelisted. Online limits go to 0 until you raise them here. Do it, I said. No interruptions to the cruise. By the time the last signature dried, IT had pushed updates. He clicked open a locking drawer and slid our cards inside for re-chipping. You'll see alerts as it propagates, he said. I'll be watching. I walked to the credit union and repeated the ritual: new tokens, password resets, transfer rails, audited statements to paper only. Friction was bolted in place. At the Riverbend site, the crane traced an arc against gray sky. I was reviewing a staging diagram when the secondary phone buzzed. Alert card declined Aurora Boutique, 683.12 security hold. 10 seconds later, attempted cash advance on the joint credit line. Declined. Then online transfer from household checking to Caledonia, 8814, blocked. Ping login attempt from new device user D. Cartwright denied. My primary phone rang. Elena. I let it roll to voicemail. A text arrived. Are you getting weird bank messages? My card isn't working. Another. I'm at lunch with Carol and Jen. This is humiliating. Then call Tom. Now. Across town, I pictured Daniel at his desk staring at a frozen screen, already composing a speech about rights and inconveniences. I needed quiet eyes. I dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Noah Park answered a cool voice. Ex-detective, now private investigator. I need discreet observation, I said. Calendars and movements. No lines crossed. Understood, he said. Who's the subject? I told him. I'll start with the attorney, he replied. Lawyers leave trails because they think they sweep them. By 1:30, my voicemail held 4 versions of Elena's frustration and 1 robocall informing joint holders that identity verification was required to restore access. Neutral policy was my favorite employee. At 2:05, Tom called. Your wife reached my assistant, he said. I told her what I'd tell anyone we had a security event, and you're doing an estate cleanup. Temporary holds protect everyone. She'll call it punishment. She can call it poetry, Tom said. It's procedure. Back at my office, I sorted evidence into 4 stacks: what a judge needs, what a banker needs, what a gossip wants, and what can wait. The recording went into stack 1 alongside a typed timeline and a certification of when and where I captured it. Every page earned a label and a date. Paper tells a calmer truth than people do. Another buzz, ATM attempt, Maple and 8th account, Caledonia, 8842 authorization failure. I pictured Daniel at the machine, smile gone thin as the card slid back out. Noah texted Cartwright left office 255, visited Granite first, emerged angry on phone, returned to firm. Coffee for 2 delivered. Second cup left at 3:40 in a gray coupe. Plate registered to E. Hale. Elena's maiden name. Interesting, not urgent. Elena finally called voice smoothed to hostess temperature. The bank says everything requires both of us in person, she said. Is that accurate? Yes, I answered. It's a review window. Routine. I could not pay the bill, she said softly, in front of friends. Submit the receipt, I said. I'll reimburse anyone you owe. Why now? Because later was worse. Silence. Then bright again. I'm going to Daniel's to help with some documents for Lila's refinancing. We can talk tonight. We will, I said. At 4, Noah called. He's furious on the phone, he said, asking for managers, dropping the word attorney like confetti. Also, he attempted an online transfer labeled tuition trust. Your name isn't on it, and the rail is frozen. Log everything I said. Stay lawful. Send me timelines. Already doing it, he said. I closed early and drove to the yard. In the shop behind a false joist, only I could remove, I placed 2 encrypted backup drives, the red fax folder, and a sealed envelope with Lila's name. Insurance is what you keep hoping you won't need. On the way home, a shower stitched lines across the windshield and stopped as fast as it started. I passed the florist where Elena once ordered centerpieces and the pawn shop where the owner waves like a mayor. At the house, I changed nothing. Same hook for my keys. Same chair, same quiet. Conspirators look for tells. I offered none. Elena arrived 20 minutes later, composed to the decimal. You made a scene, she said. I made a boundary, I said. We need access to buy groceries. There's cash in the kitchen drawer. Same code as always. She blinked. Lila said you sounded formal. Daniel asked her about my companies, I said. Formality seemed appropriate. Don't turn her against me. Don't use her training against me, I said. Whatever is happening stands on its own. The secondary phone chimed on Q login from unrecognized device, blocked user E. Hale. She saw the banner, pursed her lips, and exhaled. Fine, she said. We'll go to the bank together tomorrow. Tomorrow works. She went upstairs. I stayed where the house could see me. The fountain hissed. Somewhere a pipe settled with an old sigh. My hands were steady. I opened the legal pad and wrote 1 line, keep it clean. Let them define themselves. The night held. If they move fast, I want their first mistake loud enough for a judge to hear. Morning would arrive, and I would still control the board. The morning sun came sharp through the blinds, slicing across the kitchen counter where 2 mugs waited. Elena's was untouched. I could hear her upstairs, her measured walk from closet to dresser, the metallic click of jewelry clasps. She had always dressed like someone who expected to be seen. By the time she descended, she was polished to the last detail, beige coat, silk scarf, sunglasses balanced on her head. Ready for the bank, she asked lightly, as if yesterday hadn't happened. Let's take separate cars, I said. I have stops afterward. Her pause was half a second, but it told me she'd hoped for more control. Fine, she said. At Granite First, Tom greeted us with his professional smile. He ushered us into the same glass room as before. Elena set her purse on the table and leaned in like she was there to negotiate a treaty. I want my accounts back, she said. Tom folded his hands. Mrs. Hale, we've enacted enhanced verification for all joint accounts. Both parties must present ID, confirm contact info, and sign acknowledgement of security terms. That's ridiculous. It's standard, Tom said. Protects both account holders during transitions. Transitions, her voice sharpened. Tom kept his tone neutral. Whenever significant changes are anticipated, estate planning, business restructuring, or other enhanced verification is prudent. Elena's gaze flicked to me, looking for a crack. I kept my expression mild. It's just policy, Elena. We signed where required. Her hands trembled slightly, though her voice stayed controlled. Tom reissued cards and restored limited access enough for household spending, but nothing more. The leash was shorter now, and she knew it. Back in the parking lot, she lingered by her car door. Marcus, this feels punitive. It's protective, I said, for both of us. Her lips pressed together. She got in without another word. Halfway to my next meeting, my phone buzzed. Lila. Dad, can we talk? Her voice was steady, but I could hear something beneath it. Of course. I had lunch with Mom yesterday. She asked me questions about you, about whether you've ever controlled money to influence her. I kept my voice even. What did you say? That it's not ethical to assess without facts, and that your behavior's always been generous, not controlling. I felt something unclench in my chest. She's trying to build a story, I said carefully. I know, Lila replied, but she's doing it badly. She kept using phrases straight out of domestic abuse questionnaires like she'd memorized them. She wanted you to validate it. Yes, Lila said, and she wanted me to think you've changed recently, but you haven't, except for the bank thing. That's a security measure, not punishment. I figured, but you should know Daniel's been fishing again, asking me about your LLCs, your share structures. I told him it was complicated and boring. You handled it exactly right, I said. Silence for a moment. Then, Dad, is this about more than business? I pulled into a side street and parked. Yes. Are you going to tell me? Not yet, I said. Not until it's safe for you to know everything. She accepted that more easily than I expected. Okay, just be careful. I can tell they're planning something. I know, I said, and so am I. When we hung up, I sat for a moment, the recording in my pocket suddenly heavier. Lila's instincts were sharper than I'd realized. She'd see through a false narrative fast, and that made her dangerous to their plan. At the office, my secretary Carla had a message from Noah. Meeting between subjects scheduled for 7 p.m. at Cartwright's office. Lights and blinds closed. Second party arrives separately. Good. That meant strategy, and strategy meant more rope for them to hang themselves with. I spent the afternoon as if nothing in my life had changed, reviewing bids, approving payroll, checking site photos. The rhythm of normal work was grounding, but my mind kept circling back to 7 p.m. When it came, I wasn't there. Noah was. His report hit my phone at 9:32. Heated discussion. Subject 1, agitated pacing. Subject 2, attempting to calm. Papers spread across table. Key phrases caught through vent, accelerate, timeline abuse, narrative, restraining order, asset freeze, retaliation. I leaned back in my chair, absorbing it. They were moving to phase 2, turning my defensive measures into the very evidence they'd used to paint me as controlling. It was predictable. And it was fine, because now I knew the tempo, and I was going to make them dance to it. When I finally left the office, the streets were quiet, the air sharp. I drove home without turning on the radio. In the silence, I could hear the faint hum of the game board shifting. And I wasn't the one playing catch-up anymore. The next morning began with the sound of rain tapping the gutters, steady and deliberate, like someone knocking to be let in. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, scrolling through site reports when the secondary phone lit up. Noah's text read, "Subjects met again at 9:15 a.m. at Luna Cafe. Tone subdued, hand gestures minimal. Lip readers confirm court support emergency filing." Emergency filing. They weren't wasting time. That meant one of two things. Either they'd decided to push the divorce process forward immediately, or they were preparing to file for a restraining order under the guise of protection. Given their conversation 2 nights ago about abuse narratives, I didn't need to guess which. By mid-morning, the confirmation came. Carla poked her head into my office. "A courier just dropped this off. Looks like legal paperwork." I took the envelope. Inside was a notice for an emergency hearing, Elena's request for a temporary restraining order against me citing financial abuse, intimidation, and emotional manipulation. I read the language carefully. It was clean rehearsed and utterly false. She claimed I'd restricted access to marital assets without consent and used financial control to influence personal decisions. Every example was a stretch, at best grocery purchases requiring approval, online banking monitored by me, emotional pressure tied to household spending. The only thing she got right was that I'd restricted joint accounts, but she left out the part where $42,000 had been funneled to an account with Daniel's name on it. I set the papers down and called James Holbrook, my attorney. "I've been expecting your call," he said, voice calm as ever. "The investigator sent me his latest report. We're ready." "They're making their move," I told him. "And we'll make ours," James said. "Do you have the recording?" "Backed up twice and transcribed." "Good. We'll submit it as Exhibit A." He paused, then added, "Marcus, this will get ugly. They're trying to paint you as an abuser. Once that word's in the air, you can't pull it back. Even winning won't erase the accusation for some people." "I understand," I said, "but I'm not letting them write my story." After the call, I stared out my office window at the cranes over the riverfront project. Steel rising where there had been nothing, plans turned into reality by patient, deliberate work. This fight would be the same. At noon, Noah called, Cartwright's pacing like a caged animal in his office, phone glued to his ear. From what I caught, he's trying to line up character witnesses for Elena, people who'll say you've always been intense about money. "Let him," I said. "The truth will outweigh it." Around 3, Lila called. Her voice was tight. "Dad, Mom stopped by my place. She said you've been freezing her out of accounts, monitoring her spending, even threatening her about what would happen if she tried to leave. She wants me to testify in court." I kept my tone steady. "And what did you say?" "That I'm not taking sides without facts, and that I testify truthfully about what I've seen, which is none of what she's claiming." I exhaled. That won't make her happy. She wasn't happy, Lila said dryly. "But I'm not going to perjure myself for her." Her voice softened. "Dad, whatever this is, I want you to know I'm not blind to what's happening. And I'm with you." Those words landed heavier than she knew. I appreciate that more than I can say. That evening, as the sky went from gray to charcoal, I sat in my study reviewing documents with James. We organized the evidence into a sequence bank records showing the transfers to Daniel's account, screenshots of declined transactions, and, of course, the recording. James tapped the manila folder. "Once this is played in court, their credibility is gone. But you'll need to keep your composure. They'll try to provoke you into looking controlling." "I've spent 25 years keeping my composure," I said. "I can manage one hearing." After James left, I walked through the house. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that once felt like peace but now felt like the pause before a storm. In the living room, the wedding photo still sat on the mantel. I picked it up, studied it for a moment, then set it face down. Tomorrow, Elena and Daniel would walk into court believing they could turn my life into a cautionary tale about control and abuse. But I had the real story and the receipts to prove it. Let them tell their version. I'd make sure the ending belonged to me. The morning of the hearing broke with a sky the color of wet slate. I was up before sunrise, coffee steaming on my desk as I went over James's prep notes one last time. Every page was a reminder: stay calm, stick to facts, let them overplay. By 8 o'clock, I was in my navy suit, the same one I wore for major contract signings. It wasn't about vanity, it was about control. I would walk into that courtroom looking like the man who built everything they were trying to take. James met me at the courthouse steps, his leather briefcase in one hand, a slim flash drive in the other. "Everything's queued up," he said. "They have no idea what's coming." Inside, the air carried that faint mix of old paper disinfectant and tension. Judge Carver was on the bench, known for her intolerance of theatrics and her preference for clear evidence over emotional appeals. Elena sat at the plaintiff's table beside her attorney, Veronica Ellis, a woman with the kind of reputation that thrived in ugly divorces. Elena wore a muted blue dress and a pearl necklace I'd given her on our 15th anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. Daniel sat in the second row, hands folded, eyes scanning the room like he was assessing a jury. He tried to keep his presence low-key, but the set of his jaw gave him away. He was here to watch his play unfold. The clerk read the case number and Judge Carver nodded toward Veronica. "Proceed." Veronica stood, posture perfect, voice smooth. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Elena Hale, has endured months of financial abuse at the hands of her husband, Mr. Marcus Hale. He has restricted her access to marital funds, monitored her spending, and used control of assets to intimidate her." She gestured to Elena, who lowered her eyes just enough to seem fragile. "Mrs. Hale has been left unable to meet basic needs, relying on friends for necessities. This is not just a financial dispute. It is a pattern of coercive control." Carver's gaze shifted to James. Response: James rose, buttoning his jacket with deliberate calm. Your Honor, the defense disputes every claim. We will show that Mrs. Hale's actions in concert with an associate were part of a coordinated plan to remove substantial assets from the marital estate without my client's knowledge. When protective measures were implemented, she chose to recast them as abuse. Veronica's mouth tightened. James continued. We have documentary evidence, financial records, and most critically, a direct audio recording of Mrs. Hale and her associate detailing this plan. The judge's brows lifted slightly. Let's hear it. James plugged the flash drive into the courtroom's audio system. And there it was, Elena's voice clear and unmistakable. Once Marcus signs the papers, it's all ours. We just have to hold steady. Daniel's voice followed file in July claim irreconcilable differences. You'll get half of everything, plus lifetime support. You could feel the room shift. Every cough and shuffle faded into silence. The recording went on, Elena's laughter cutting through the air, her words about 2 years of pretending to care, Daniel's brag about documenting my assets, their talk of timelines, strategies, and payouts. When it ended, Judge Carver sat back, expression unreadable. Mrs. Hale, do you dispute the authenticity of this recording? Elena glanced at Veronica, who whispered something rapid. I don't recall the exact conversation, but it's your voice, Carver interrupted. Yes, Elena said, voice dropping. Carver turned to Veronica. Counsel, you filed an affidavit alleging ongoing abuse. Did your client disclose this recording to you before filing? Veronica hesitated, then shook her head. No, Your Honor. Carver's voice cooled. This court does not look kindly on material omissions. Given this evidence, the petition for a temporary restraining order is denied. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for review of potential perjury. Elena's face went pale. Daniel stared at the floor, jaw working. James closed his folder slowly, the sound of it snapping shut louder than it needed to be. No further comment, Your Honor. When the gavel came down, it was more than just the end of the hearing. It was the first public crack in their facade, the kind you can't patch without everyone seeing the damage. Outside, the air smelled of rain and fresh asphalt. James gave me a small nod. One battle down. They'll be scrambling now. They should be, I said. They just learned the war won't be fought on their terms. By the next morning, the ripple had already reached the surface. In a town like ours, courtroom news moves faster than weather reports. At the coffee shop across from the courthouse, I could feel eyes flick toward me, then away as if people were measuring whether to speak. It didn't take long for someone to break the ice. Jim Donovan from the Chamber of Commerce slid into the seat across from mine, coffee in hand. Heard about yesterday, he said quietly. People are saying the recording was thorough. Thorough enough, I said. Jim shook his head. She's not going to recover from that. And him. Well, the contractors have been talking about his payment delays for months. This just cements it. That was the point. Truth doesn't just win in court, it erodes reputations until there's nothing left to salvage. By mid-morning, Noah's updates were steady. Subject E spotted leaving Cartwright's office. No handshake. No eye contact. Both appear tense. A second text followed. Minutes later, Cartwright called 2 clients from his car. Tone urgent. Mentioned retainers and contract terminations. The first tangible blow came at noon. An email forwarded from a friend at Miller & Cross, a large local manufacturer. Effective immediately. Our firm will no longer require legal services from Cartwright Law due to concerns over professional judgment. That account alone was worth nearly $200,000 annually. At 1 o'clock, my phone buzzed with Lila's name. Dad. Mom just called me sobbing, she said. She says everyone's avoiding her. The country club postponed her committee meetings. Her friends aren't answering texts. That didn't take long, I said. She's blaming you, Lila added. Of course she is, I said, keeping my tone even. It's easier than looking in the mirror. Lila hesitated. She also said she might go stay with Aunt Claire in Minnesota for a while. Said she needs to clear her head. I knew what that meant. Regroup, strategize, maybe put distance between herself and Daniel until the heat cooled. But their partnership had cracks now, and cracks tend to spread under pressure. That afternoon, James called with news. Marcus Veronica Ellis has filed a motion to withdraw as Elena's counsel. She's jumping ship already. She told the court she was not made aware of the recording before filing the TRO. My guess is she doesn't want to risk being tied to potential perjury charges. It was another blow for Elena. Losing her attorney meant losing her mouthpiece. By 5 o'clock, Noah's last report for the day came and Subject D seen alone at Luna Cafe. No ring on finger, appeared agitated, scrolling phone head in hands. The separation between them was starting to show in public. That night, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in the living room, the wedding photo still face down on the mantel. The quiet wasn't oppressive anymore, it felt earned. I thought about the path from that day at Daniel's window to here, the recording, the evidence, the court. Every step had been deliberate. No shouting matches, no rash moves, just strategy. And now they were the ones reacting, scrambling to control a narrative that had already slipped through their fingers. I knew better than to think it was over. People like Elena and Daniel don't just give up, they look for another opening. But every time they moved, they exposed more of themselves. Tomorrow, I'd make sure the exposure continued. The next morning, the wind had shifted. You could feel it in the way people greeted me, half nods replaced with firm handshakes, eyes meeting mine without the sideways glance of uncertainty. The hearing had done its work. I was halfway through my first coffee when Noah called. "Cartwright's in trouble," he said without preamble. Got word from a contact at the Bar Association his trust account audit has been fast-tracked. They've pulled 18 months of records. Hearing is scheduled for Thursday. "Fast," I said. "Faster than he's ready for," Noah replied. "They're already asking questions about the Mitchell job. You know, the one where subs didn't get paid." I smiled to myself. I know it well. At the office, James was waiting. "This is the point where they start making mistakes," he said. "Daniel's professional survival depends on keeping his license. He can't fight you and the bar at the same time without slipping." We reviewed a short list of pressure points, unpaid contractor invoices, ethics complaints from other clients, and the loss of key accounts. If even one of these hits before his hearing, James said he'll be more concerned with saving himself than helping Elena. By mid-morning, I got a text from Lila. Mom called again. Said Daniel hasn't been returning her messages. She's worried about him. I typed back, he's worried about himself. Around noon, I took a quiet lunch at a diner out by the highway. The booths were cracked vinyl, the coffee came in mismatched mugs, and no one cared who you were. It was the kind of place where information traded hands without fanfare. Evan, a foreman I'd worked with on 3 projects, slid into the opposite seat. "Heard about Cartwright," he said. "You want me to put you in touch with the roofing guys he stiffed last fall." "Have them call my attorney," I said. "The more witnesses, the better." Back at the office, Carla handed me a plain envelope. "Courier dropped this off, no return address." Inside was a single sheet of paper, an itemized list of transactions from a Caledonia savings account ending in 8814. Each line was a withdrawal or transfer clothing boutiques, spa treatments, upscale restaurants. In the margin, someone had circled a set of entries marked as cashier's checks payable to D. Cartwright. I didn't need to guess who sent it. Somewhere out there, one of Daniel's allies had decided to switch sides. That evening, Noah called again. Subjects met separately today. Elena at Aunt Claire's house in Lakeview, Cartwright at his office shredding documents. At least 3 boxes worth. Shredding in the middle of an ethics audit, I asked. "That's what I said," Noah replied. "Either he's desperate or stupid, maybe both." By 9 o'clock, I was in my study reviewing the Caledonia statement under the desk lamp. Every circled check was another nail in their case's coffin. They'd set out to paint me as controlling, manipulative, dangerous. But with every step, they were making themselves smaller, weaker, more obvious. And Thursday's hearing for Daniel, that was going to be the breaking point. Thursday morning broke cold and bright, the kind of sharp weather that makes sound travel farther. I stood outside the Davenport Bar Association's hearing room, hands in my coat pockets, as attorneys filed past in muted suits. Inside, the walls were lined with file boxes, each one labeled with a case or a name. Today, one of those names was Daniel Cartwright. Noah had arrived early, slipping into a seat near the back. He texted Cartwright just came in. "Looks tired, no tie, hair uncombed." At precisely 9, the panel entered a half circle of 5 attorneys, gray-haired and deliberate. The chair cleared her throat. "Mr. Cartwright, we're here to address multiple allegations of mishandling client trust accounts, failure to pay subcontractors, and potential misuse of settlement funds." Daniel began with a shaky explanation about administrative delays and client misunderstandings. The panel listened without expression. Then the questioning started. One panelist opened a folder. "We have invoices from Martinez Electrical dated 8 months ago, marked paid by the client. Where are those funds?" Daniel shifted. Those were temporarily redirected to cover firm overhead during a... That's a violation, the panelist cut in. Trust funds are not your operating account. The questioning continued. Chen Plumbing, Foster Roofing, 3 more small firms, each unpaid, each with proof that Daniel had received the money. Then came the kicker. The chair lifted a page. Mr. Cartwright, can you explain these cashier's checks from a Caledonia savings account to yourself funded by transfers from a joint account with Mrs. Elena Hale? Daniel froze. Those were personal gifts. The chair's voice sharpened. Mr. Cartwright, those funds originated from marital assets not belonging solely to Mrs. Hale, and you are neither spouse nor fiduciary. From my seat in the back, I could see his ears turning red. He stammered, but the damage was done. By 11, the panel announced they would reconvene in 30 days to deliver a formal decision, but everyone in that room knew what was coming: license suspension, if not permanent disbarment. Outside, Noah fell in step beside me. He's done, he said simply. That afternoon, the phone calls began. Elena's voice on the first one was frantic. Marcus, please, can we talk? I think Daniel's in trouble. I kept my tone level. You think? I didn't know it was this bad. You didn't want to know, I corrected. The silence on the line stretched until she hung up. By evening, Lila called. Mom came by. She said she's thinking about cutting ties with Daniel for her own protection. That's her way of saying she wants a softer landing, I told her. Lila sighed. She asked if you'd be willing to revisit the divorce terms. I told her that was between you and your lawyer. I thanked her for keeping distance. She didn't need to be in the blast zone when the last wall came down. That night, I poured a drink and sat at the desk with the Caledonia statement in front of me. Those circled checks were more than numbers. They were proof of the greed that had driven every move they'd made. They'd tried to script my downfall, but the ending was already written, and it wasn't theirs to tell anymore. The final court date arrived with the same clarity as a fresh blueprint. After months of maneuvering, this was the moment to lock it all into place. I walked into the Davenport County Courthouse alongside James, the folder in his hand containing every piece of evidence we'd stacked, like Brick's recordings, bank statements, investigator logs, and the Caledonia savings records with those damning circled checks. Elena was already at the defendant's table alone. Without counsel, she looked smaller, her posture more tentative. She still wore the pearls, but they didn't carry the same weight. Daniel wasn't in the room, likely holed up somewhere waiting for the bar's decision. Judge Carver entered her black robe, cutting a clean line through the room's quiet. This is the final hearing for the dissolution of marriage between Marcus Hale and Elena Hale. Are both parties ready to proceed? Yes, Your Honor, James said. Elena's voice was softer. Yes. James began with precision. Your Honor, the prenuptial agreement signed in 1996 governs this divorce. Under its terms, Mrs. Hale is entitled to a modest settlement from marital assets, provided there is no evidence of fraud, concealment, or dissipation of assets. He paused. We have ample evidence of all three. He laid out the sequence, the recording of Elena and Daniel planning the asset grab, the unauthorized transfers to Caledonia, the cashier's checks to Daniel, the attempt to frame lawful financial protections as abuse. The judge flipped through each exhibit, her brow tightening incrementally. When James finished, she turned to Elena. Do you contest this evidence? Elena glanced at the stack of paper, her own words and actions printed in black ink. No, she said, finally, almost inaudible. In that case, Carver said the court finds that Mrs. Hale has acted in bad faith, engaged in conduct to conceal and transfer marital assets, and attempted to mislead this court through false statements. Under the prenuptial agreement, she is entitled to the base settlement of $50,000. No spousal support will be awarded. The gavel struck once. The sound carried farther than the walls. When it was over, Elena left quickly, not meeting my eyes. Outside, James clasped my shoulder. It's done, he said. But I knew it wasn't just about the legal end. It was about the ripples. Within weeks, Daniel's license was formally revoked, permanent disbarment for multiple trust account violations. Word spread fast. No one in the county would touch him professionally. Lila filed for divorce 3 days later. She came by the house one evening, paperwork in hand, and said, I'm choosing clean over complicated. I could see the relief in her eyes. As for Elena, I heard through the grapevine that she'd taken a retail job at a boutique 2 towns over. She was living with her sister in a modest split level far from the clubs and luncheons that had once defined her days. The house was mine again, not just legally, but in truth. I walked through the rooms without wondering which moments were staged. The fountain still ran in the driveway, but it sounded different now, less ornamental, more like water, finding its own path. One night, I set the wedding photo back upright on the mantle, not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder. I'd believed in the woman in that picture. I'd built a life for her. And when she chose to dismantle it, I built something else instead, a line she couldn't cross. If you've watched this far, you know sometimes the best revenge isn't fire and fury. It's precision. It's the quiet, methodical work of making sure the truth stands when everything else falls. And that's what I was left with my name, my work, my life still standing. And that's how it ended. Not with shouting, not with chaos, but with the truth laid bare for everyone to see. They wanted to write the story of my downfall, but in the end, I wrote the last chapter myself. I kept my name, my work, and my life, and left their lies to crumble under their own weight. If this story hit you the way it hit me, living it, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? I'm Marcus Hale, and sometimes the best revenge is simply standing when everything else falls.